Now I am.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
Oh boy. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you recording now?
Yep.
Okay. Testing, 1, 2. Sauce, applesauce. Vaughn, what is your favorite food?
Applesauce.
That is what I thought. All right. Today, to the welcome to this week's episode of the Wannabe Podcast. Vaughn, what are we talking about today?
Colts, baby. We're talking about Colts.
Oh, night baby. Yes, that is what we're talking about today. We are talking about Colts. Vaughn, what is your favorite Colt?
Favorite
Talking
Colt.
about.
I think one of my favorite Colts has to
No, the
be.
French beans have a point.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
think I think the People's Temple. I think that one's pretty
Uh-huh.
interesting because it's a utopian movement.
What is that? Waco?
No, no,
Is
no.
that
People's
Waco? The
Temple.
Waco
It's
people?
the Jim Jones guy, dude. It's the Indianapolis. It's
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Jim Jones. Kind of forgot about him.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, even though Jones, how old was this dude? He was fairly old, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I think he was around like
40.
39 or 40, I believe. And so he
Um,
was like he
yeah, here
was
we go. Jim Jones was born in 1931 and died on November 18th in 1978. We'll
yep.
get into why he died or how he died later, but
But for right now, I think okay, so it says in 1974, the People's Temple signed a lease to rent land in Guana. And it was a agricultural project informally dubbed as Jonestown. It in its early days
so
it
you're
had
telling me
50 residents in 1977.
okay, so then how do we go from 50 people in 1977 to over 400 people within a year?
Well, because it's the interesting thing of a human mind, and in another country, I would say that's an entirely like different thing because even in America, there's people susceptible to things. I would say like
Yeah.
less, but in other countries, I would say they're more susceptible. At least in like foreign countries like Guana. But it was essentially just like a socialist paradise, is what I would call it, and it was a former member.
In theology
Yeah, a
and
bunch of it's like divide and conquer kind of. It's like you instill things,
right.
and like a bunch of people saw this opportunity in the new land to get away from the United States, as a lot of people that admired the cult wanted to go along with the socialist ideas because they saw the United States as becoming a fascist country in a way, and so they wanted
But
to
wasn't
kind of
it
preserve it.
didn't he was also majority of his population was also African American, right? Because if you also
Yeah,
got to
yeah, yeah, yeah. It
understand
was
that
it
the
was weird.
Indies when this is taking place is during after civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Which is I think important because a lot of people because he's basically only having to say, "Hey, I'm having a huge amount of land being bought where people can live without the fear of racism, the fear of
Mhm.
death at night." It was not hard for him to attract these kinds of like African Americans to live with him island, which I think is the big area of where we see his population in 1970 go from
Yeah,
50
speaking on
people
that,
to
like, dude,
1975 or 1978 where
yeah.
he goes to 400 plus people where which is crazy to me.
Yeah, I think here's a quote from him. He said, "It was a place, a black country it was a place in a black country where our black members could live in peace. And I think that was like a green button, a green go for this place, and it kind of instilled
Mm-hmm.
it instilled the idea of this is a good place. And then shortly thereafter, the population in 1978, it grew over 900 people, which is insane in
Oh
almost a
wow.
year. So it was more than the
Mm-hmm.
original 400 in the early 1978. But after, in the late 1978, it kind of things were kind of going downhill.
Because
Representatives
from what
from
I
the U.S.
understand,
were like coming there and like seeing what it was.
right, but isn't the whole reason he got caught was because like so the whole there was a whole cover story, right, to have
Mm-hmm.
the whole farmland thing, right? So
Yeah.
didn't he end up getting caught because like I'm pretty sure he was getting shipped like thousands of like a good decent amount of grenades.
Mm-hmm. Like they were
Yes,
they
the
were
ones that
armed.
explode.
I would say they
And that's
were.
what got the government isn't that's what the government realizes, holy, we are about
Mm-hmm.
this like like this secret not secret island, but this island this movement is getting weapons, which is I think the most important part, because without that if without the grenades being like found, he would have been fine. But as soon
Yeah.
as the grenades got found and his weapon shipments were getting tracked, that's immediately when they found out that's what they were doing. They were getting violent. They were going to plan something, which
Yeah.
is why, which is where I think the reason, like the whole November 18th, 1970, there was an absolute crap show.
Oh yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
everything just falls apart.
Yeah.
And
So you had like a
if you want to
bunch of
talk about it, I am
journalists.
okay with you going for it.
Yeah. Like a bunch of
It
journalists visited the island and just to see what it was. And all the members were kind of in a weird state of fear and also like euphoric like absence in a way. The reporters were very concerned in a way. They were seeing all these people and
well, understandably they were.
they didn't think much of it until the people started to come up to them and they just started to like break down. And but the guards found it and they started they opened fire on the group of journalists, on the
On the
group of
press,
reporters.
yeah.
And
Which
a few people, or I think one person survived. It was Jackie Spear, if I remember correctly, and one was shot in the head like point blank as the camera was rolling. And
oh, you're talking to press members. I'm okay.
yeah, the journalists that were there at the point, and one survived. She was shot 5 times in the leg, and well, she was shot 5 times, and one of them hit in the leg, which caused massive damage. And then later, later that night on the 18th, the Jim Jones, he ordered all the people in his congregation to drink the grape flavored Kool-Aid, the cyanide laced Kool-Aid, where they died. That's where the term "don't drink the Kool-Aid" comes from, which is just don't buy into crappy
Is it
ideas.
really?
Yeah, that's actually where it comes from.
The don't drink the Kool-Aid came from.
Yeah, yeah, that it
But
came from that event.
to me, the fact so not only did the cyanide Kool-Aid not fully work, he literally had to kill himself.
Yeah, like he
Jim Jones
shot
shot
himself.
himself
He just shot himself because
in
he
the
believed
fact of
God was protecting him.
the mass murder,
Yeah.
mass murder suicide act, which is crazy to me.
Which, I mean,
But
you see a bunch of these like religious. I wouldn't even call them the religious. I don't believe they deserve to even have that title. They're cults.
I
Call
don't
them
think
what
they
it
fall
is.
under religion.
I mean, call them what they are.
Uh,
Don't like sugarcoat it or anything. I would say
uh-uh.
that they are like Heaven's Gate. That was another one where they had
We'll
Nike
get in,
court.
we'll get into Heaven's Gate
We'll
later.
get into Heaven's Gate a little bit, but it was the whole thing of just trying to win over this
Right.
group, and a lot of these cults turn into armed cults, and that's what makes them
Yeah, which
dangerous in a
is
way. And they're already dangerous with ideologies that
exactly
can harm people, but having weaponry, I think that's like a big no.
right. And what's even crazier is in 1965, while Jonestown is being slowly built up, he warned I'm going to call it a congregation, his group, his followers, whatever you want to call them. He called he called in 1965. I'm reading this off of Britannica, which did a whole story on him. He warned, this is what it says. In 1965, he warned of a nuclear holocaust, which I think is absurd to use the
Mm-hmm.
word nuclear holocaust.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, yeah, sure, you could say like nuclear warfare. We had in World War II, the atom bomb, all that stuff was happening. But to call it another Holocaust is ridiculous to me.
Oh,
But I
absolutely.
also do believe that that is what attracted it's they're
It attracted
using
people.
almost a scare tactic, a threat of like build an imposing threat. Tell them that something is going to happen and they'll follow you like sheep.
Oh, absolutely. And that's when it turns into like a doomsday cult, and I think one of the,
Exactly.
moving on from, the People's Temple, because that was just a nightmare. I think the next big one, I think it was the Waco incident and the Branch Davidians. I think that was one of most the
Oh,
most
for sure.
disappointing events in the
American
recent,
history.
yeah, in recent American history, as it was. I wouldn't
What
say
was
it
it?
was
April.
entirely
It's
the Colts'
the
fault,
big
but
siege itself was
I would say it
yeah.
was a big part on the ATF. I think it was a big part on the
Oh, for
actual
sure.
on the actual police.
The side, the policing and government side for sure did not.
Yeah, and I think
They were in there supposed to like de-escalate the situation,
yeah,
and all of a sudden we have children dying in the 50s.
yeah, and Molotovs were being thrown. Everything was being thrown. Fire broke out, and it killed 82 people on the side of the Branch Davidians, but only 4 were killed on the
In a
ATF.
farmland.
Yeah, and in a location in rural Texas. Um, 76 were
Which
killed
is
on
crazy.
one day in April
Entire
19th, including 28 children.
mm-hmm.
And I mean, okay, Colts. There's a
This is
really weird
one of the
fine line
biggest
between.
government mess ups.
Oh, absolutely,
Religion.
absolutely. It was. I understand. Okay, I get both sides. I understand the officers were just trying to do their duty. They were trying to, protect and serve what they signed up for, basically. But in a way, they didn't really sign up for this. The ATF, sure, that's what they do, but you know the Texas Rangers, the police. Actually, I spoke to a guy who was on duty that day, and they wanted him to go to Waco. They wanted him to go to Waco, Texas, and he said, he got there, and he was like, "No, I'm out. I'm not doing this." And he saved his butt.
He left.
He saved his consciousness, I would say,
Well, yeah,
because
yeah,
it
but
was, yeah.
we'll talk more about the whole incident itself. But I only like I want to start us off. Let's start from the very beginning. Let's talk about Vernon Howell or
Mm-hmm.
David. This, he looks ridiculous. Like he does not look like your average cult leader,
No.
high rank. member of a cult.
Yeah.
He looks, if you find a picture of him, he looks like he worked at a Blockbuster.
Oh, absolutely. He looks almost like a nerd.
Does not
Okay.
look like
He does not seem like
he
a cult leader.
exactly. He does not.
He looks like
But
some
I
dude who
think
just got off his
it's
9 to 5.
like the serial killer thing. It's like the
Mhm.
serial killer theory. You never expect someone to be you never suspect someone to be a serial killer till they do it. And this is like you just don't see it. He wasn't necessarily a leader of a violent, which I think we're gonna
Mhm.
odd out here,
Yeah.
but the fact that he's like is orchestrating these ridiculous. He he is like found like crazy. He's found guilty under insanity. He but it's ish to me.
Oh yeah, it
People
was
like this
absolutely.
existed and still do exist.
Which I mean, it's kind of like we have yet to see the next big cult rise up, like Waco or not like Waco, but like the
Uh
Branch
huh.
Davidians or any of these cults. I think hopefully we're at a standstill of either we don't know that they exist right now or they already exist but they've kind of died down or there's just not really any
Yeah.
cults at all. I think
Or
it's weird.
we
It's a
have
different
considered.
age.
Yeah. What we've noticed are though is that the like our the cults we've talked about so far, the people's and the branch. So far, we have noticed that there's one thing in common, and that's a like a violent ideology leaders like whole thing.
Oh
If
yeah,
that makes sense.
absolutely.
I think that's the one thing we have gotten out of this so far. That
Yeah,
every leader has had a violent ideology and has a big. Been a bigger idea to this.
and
Like they do
it's
all these small things, building up to something that's just out there.
outlandish. I think
Yeah.
it's sad because all these cult leaders, they just prey on the weak and like downtrodden, the people who are at a low point in life. Any like sense of hope would drive them to actually do something or join something or just get anything that is better than what they have now. And it's sad. I'll say it. It's completely sad that you know people like that join cults have to rely on that because they're at such a low point in life, and they're so
Mm-hmm.
easily manipulated and tricked into thinking thinking these things, and they're thinking them they're real or they're growing up with it, and it's sad. And living in a technology world, I'm honestly kind of surprised that we haven't been indoctrinated into a cult yet, or like at least other people have,
Exactly.
or it makes
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's prime time for a cult. Like I right now,
For
I
sure.
think
There's got to be
there's got to be
there.
something. But it's just the
I just found.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, we're good. I found some information on this is some information that was released that was the day before February 28th, which was the
Mm,
start of the siege,
start of the
right?
siege, yeah.
So I a Herald began publishing a series of articles in their newspaper that was called the Sinful Messiah. This was these articles were by Mark England and Darlene McCormick. These basically news like found that there were against Koresh or Branch Davidian leader David Koresh. Yeah, he I guess was found who was sexually abusing children, rape, and more brides. He was
Yeah.
marrying underage, and he was caught. he was known as he was polygamous and was known a 40 wives,
That's insane.
zero, and he had fathered at least a dozen children, and he have like mothers and married to women that were 12 or 13 years old.
That's insane. And
And I
that's
think this is the and this is I think the trigger because later they find that he was housing illegal firearms, and that's when their siege started.
yeah. And I
And like
think
the whole opening,
oh yeah,
there's
absolutely.
even an opening to the document right here. If you are a Branch Davidian, Christ lives on a land 10 miles east called Mount Carmel. He has dimples, claims that he married his legal wife when she was 14 years old.
Mhm.
And then and plays a mean guitar. Reportedly packs a 9mm Glock and keeps an arsenal of military assault rifles and willingly admits he is a sinner without equal. That is the opening paragraph in the
Mhm. And
we
that's crazy.
having the press attack you like that.
Yeah,
That
it's
is going to set you off, and
oh, absolutely.
it's going to get us into like this slippery slope of ideology. I think it's going to get us into this, the running for Zion FLDS incident
Yeah.
in like what 2014.
I would say no, it was 2008. It was 2008. But this kind of
Was it
spans
2008? Okay.
years. The whole FLDS thing. I have a major, and I mean major, issue with the whole FLDS group as a whole. I think they're some of the most vile human beings on earth. I wouldn't say the children or the women are. I would say the men are probably the most vile, disgusting things I have ever bared witness to in my entire life, and had the displeasure of actually running into some of them. It's it spans
Don't
it
they?
spans
Isn't their leader in prison?
yeah, the guy Warren Jeffs, he was in prison, and
He's
because
in prison for what?
he
Did it say what?
yeah, he was in prison for having underage women or having underage women as wives, and having you know sex with these
Underage women.
underage girls, and it's
That is
disgusting.
ridiculous.
It's absolutely disgusting, and I don't think the world should ever have, you know, I don't think they should exist. I think what should happen is it's like a Scientology thing. Scientology is another one that maybe we'll get into if we have time, but the FLDS, it's hard to put into words how actually disgusting it was. And it was founded in 1929 by a Mormon called Lawrence C. Woolley. He founded the thing, and it was based on the Mormon religion, and they called it the Fundamentalists Latter Day Saints. And it was in 1920 where it started to kind of kick off. 1929, it started to kick off from there.
This is when they had separated it. This is when the Church of Latter Day Saints officially separated
Yeah.
themselves from these people. Like they were like it was kind of assumed before, but now this was made public. This was now known for them to be gone. Like these are some of the same beliefs, but they are
Mm-hmm.
not associated with them anymore.
Yeah,
which I think
and
is an important idea. We have to make sure that is specified before I think we keep going.
yeah, and I mean, it really depends on the person. If they, I mean, I've met a couple people that still agree with both sides, and good for them. But I think the clear divide is still pretty wild. But
Yeah,
the original like headquarters, I would say, stomping grounds or whatever. It was near Short Creek, Arizona. I've actually been to it, and they still use the place. They still use the place after
really.
the raid. They still use it. They don't really talk about it. If you go down to St. George, or if you go really anywhere in Salt Lake,
If you go in the south, you'll like
you'll
southeast
see a lot more
Utah,
of them.
you'll
But there's a bunch
see
of
them extremely common.
polygamous businesses that are still owned, and probably you've been to, and it's owned by the
Yeah,
Kingsman clan or something like that. The Kingston clan, yeah, and they own a ton of businesses, a ton of buildings around, Farmington, Salt Lake, Bountiful, Centerville, South Jordan, they everywhere, and
right.
it kind of funds their operation, their scheme, and there's only been a few people that
Exactly.
have
These
ever
colored
gotten out.
businesses.
Yeah, there's only a few girls that have ever gotten out, a few guys that have come out and come forward, because
Yeah.
just like the People's Temple Church and the Branch Davidians, they were
Waco
armed,
Siege,
and
Branch
they
Davidians.
are still armed, and it was before the
Which is crazy to me
yeah, which is insane. Like, I don't
because
understand.
I think there's two connections I've made. One is another connection that there's cover businesses. These
Mm-hmm.
businesses are what keep them around, what make it technically, I'm going to say legal when in quotation marks.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, Waco Siege, the only reason we haven't had a Waco Siege in Utah is because they don't want it to happen again.
No.
I think because of what the FLDS has like children wise and women wise, they do not want to. The I don't think any government wants the liability of hundreds of deaths, if not thousands of deaths,
Oh
in
yeah,
these
absolutely.
like compounds, these absolute behemoth compounds that they are not allowed to leave from. Which I think the fact that they are forced to stay there is why April 2008 even happens.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
on March 20, so I'm gonna get right into it. On March 29th of 2008, a local domestic violence hotline took a call from a woman identifying herself as Sarah, and she was claiming to be a 16-year-old victim of sexual and physical abuse of the uh, the or rent, which they found to be a woman named Rosita Swinton, who had been arrested several times. Actual hoax calls and posing, quote unquote, posing to be an abused victim. And this call now triggered a large operation to be searched. And later, the government sent teams, snipers, helicopters, and even Midland County, which is a county in Texas, sent a M113 armored personnel carry vehicle, which is basically, I believe it's a semi-aquatic tank, basically that
Pretty,
is meant
yeah.
to
No,
send
I know what it
troops
looks like. It's an
across.
insane type of vehicle to bring to something like this,
Exactly.
but in reality, I think it is justified. It's the preying on little women or little girls, and the preying on young women
Exactly.
to I guess fund their new way of life in a way. And they all dress a certain way. You can easily spot them out. They always wear the old timey outfits where it's just like a gown,
Exactly.
and it's weird. You'll see men with them, and they're like, it's weird. They're like animals. They're treated like
They're almost
children.
shady.
Yeah,
They're
they're shady. They
oh,
can wear whatever they want. they usually have like trucks
Exactly.
with them. They usually have trucks with them, and they're like insanely rich too. They're very wealthy, but they still dress the women
Exactly.
in these
They
weird
have
clothes.
land that's over $1 million.
Oh, absolutely. They're worth a
But what's
lot
even
of money.
crazier, but what's even crazier is after. So, I'm gonna say there were still some like original like people that did like off themselves,
Yeah.
but they found this. I'm gonna throw you some numbers out at you
Mm-hmm.
right now. They first day of the main compound in Texas, five. CPS counted this number. Protective Services counted 130, about 130. So it could be more, it could be 130 children that were under the five that were confirmed to be abused. Later at eventually a total of 462 total children were put into temporary custody in the state of Texas, and were
That's
held in the Child Protective Services at Chancho, which is one of the biggest facilities in the United States for Child Protective Services. 462 children were abused and held basically captive, knowing that they were not allowed to leave. And by April 8th, authorities had removed as many as 533 women and children from the ranch.
yeah, and see that that bugs me. And recently there was a law put into place. It was very recent. It pretty much allows polygamy to be legal in Utah, and that goes against the entire.
What
It
law
goes
is
against the
that?
law. I don't remember. It was some sort. It was some sort of. It was some sort of compromise. I think it was something. Hold on, I'm trying to find it here. New. It was something along the line. Polygamy law, Utah. Yeah, and it says, oh yeah. Here we go. On April 13th, 2022, Utah signed into effect that practicing polygamy in Utah is no longer a felony crime, which
That's crazy.
and it was it was insane. When I heard the news, I
That's
was
just
upset.
shocking. I don't
I
know
was
what
I was
else to even
upset.
use.
I Cuz which makes me think there's got to be some weird kind of shady under the table deal that's happening that, the common folk, the people that us, that we don't exactly know about, because there's a lot of money. They're worth a lot of
I'm not
money.
gonna. I'm gonna sound like I'm criticizing you here. Sound like I'm criticizing you here when really you're not. Are you theorizing that there's potential for uh, cults and other leaders? Like it's the definite like curtain theory from
Mm-hmm.
World War that influence we don't get to basic like it's probably extremely dangerous
Oh yeah,
to consider.
yeah. I mean, it's dangerous, but in a way, it would make sense because it's only in Utah that they have that law, and the majority of the FLDS people are in Utah, and that law only favors them. And I don't see anyone, our age, like a little bit
There's
older.
actually I have found something that is I have found some crazy. There's some. I think you might be onto something. So I guess looking at some information here that I have on the FLDS,
Mm-hmm.
there's I guess the whole area, like the whole thing, has been $30,000 violations,
Wow.
which $30,000 doesn't sound a lot until you find out what they were technically doing wrong. Turns out they didn't have these permits for concrete mixing operations. Keep in
That's
mind, this is in 2008 or
yeah.
2005, which technically means that there has been how many years now of that kind of money? The fact they've only been fined about $30,000 is crazy to me.
And
And they have a net worth of around $3 million.
which
Like 900 people, $300
yeah.
million. Where are they getting that money from?
I'm telling you, man, it's the businesses around here, but it might be coming from the government too. It's a high possibility because think about it. Before last year, before April of 2020, it was a crime to be a polygamist, and not
Exactly.
once have I ever seen any sort of raids, any sort of arrests happen in Utah, or at least never heard about them. And if it's a crime and you know this large group, why wouldn't you take care of it?
Exactly. Which I think the biggest part that you have to think about
Oh, absolutely.
is that they're not taking care of it.
I think that's is I think it's very shady what this whole story with the FLDS. It was in August.
Oh,
It was August
absolutely.
1st of 2022. A lot of FLDS people went missing in a way because they got a call. This guy Warren Jeffs got a premonition, and his son required everyone to come back to the main area, and he raises this alarm to come back. It was a revelation that he said, and it states that um I'll give you some quotes here. It says, "Pray that Warren Jeffs will go free, and he can meet you in your congregation soon. All peoples who desire to be members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on earth." And it also says, it states that the baptisms and sealings in the celestial plural marriage unions will take place for those Lord revealeth, the mortal keyholder Warren Steed Jeffs, who is worthy. It appears to call for that some to return to the faith, declaring that the Father desiring restoral can gather their birth children and only who was their wives on earth, with the birth children
So
presented in different family groups. So basically what it is saying, it's saying that all of it, he's gathering all these people to come back, and it sounds like he's gonna, although he's serving life right now, he still has an influence, which he shouldn't, because he's under maximum security prison. And
absolutely not. It's the fact that he has an influence still and they truly believe that they're gonna let him free is the most dangerous part, I
oh
think.
yeah, I think it's purely
There
dangerous, even though they're several states away. And
Oh, absolutely. He would have to, all he has to do is have someone that's a quote unquote lawyer say that he's gonna be like talking about his rights or something like that, some
mhm,
bullcrap, right? And then all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, tell the people to free me." All they're gonna do, that's all he's got to do, right? And then all of a sudden, hundreds of people are gonna be at the prison, ready to storm up one guy, which is
yeah.
not gonna work because of how where he is. But it's just threatening hundreds of lives still, no matter which side you're on at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And here's one of the last part. It says, it gives also warning. It says, "I the Lord loveth all, yet I cannot allow sin living to dwell among my church membership any longer. Zion meaneth the pure heart souls will be tested, pure, faithful, and true, living by every word of Christ." And it's that Zion. I don't know much about what they read. I've never really read anything of theirs, but
Mm-hmm.
it's thinking of the Zion raid. I think that poses an alarm. It's been a few months, but none of them, like a bunch. There's polygamists in our school district, and they've all went missing, just to go back to this way of kind of like life out in the and that the
Which
whole
I don't
pray that
think
he will
they
go
know any
free is,
other way though.
which is
Which
sad, and
yeah,
I hope, and it's a big hope asking from the current state of government. I hope they at least do something to prevent it. I at least hope
exactly.
that there's something that we can do to combat this vile organization.
Exactly. And I
It's
think that's where we're gonna leave it. We're gonna leave it with if you not I'm not gonna give a call to action necessarily.
mm-hmm.
Have to stay vigilant where we are today, knowing where our government is going, and know what has happened in the past. It would not be crazy to think like this is gonna happen in the future.
Oh,
So
absolutely. And
on that note, we're gonna leave it at
yeah,
this. We're gonna leave it here. Vaughn, do you have any other words to say?
I would say I wouldn't say it's a call to action, but would we be? Should the citizens be responsible this time? Should there be some sort of vigilanteism? It's some taking some action into
I
our
don't
own
think we
hands.
should. I don't think we should necessarily vigilantism, but I think we need to. I think people need to stay vigilant for what they're seeing. If they are
Oh,
seeing,
absolutely.
I think people aren't. I think people aren't willing to speak up when they see something that happens. And if, say, something does, it happens to be related to a religion or a potentially something new kind of hold, a new threat, one might say, just don't dig deeper into it. Call authorities,
Oh,
see see if it turns out to be anything. If it doesn't, oh well. But that's what cults are good at. They're good at hiding their evidence. They're good at cutting loose ends. And I think that's that's the scary part. But we
But we're
can't
gonna
really
leave it
do
at
anything
that.
about it as people. We can definitely stand up for change. We can definitely be vigilant for those who are mentally unstable. That's where I think we could go, is if you see
Absolutely.
someone with a deadly ideology that can potentially hurt you, someone else, or themselves, talk to someone, figure it out. And I think that's where we're going to go. We'll see you on the next episode of the Wannabe Podcast. See you next week.
See ya.